is still alive and deadly.
What's happening, man?
Now that's it.
You got the money, man?
Let me see the shit, man.
The shit's there, man. Where's the money?
5 minutes. 5 minutes, baby.
No, man. No money, no shit.
Ah, man, 5 minutes.
Oh, fuck you, man.
Unit 708, I'm on the scene.
Head for it.
While the knife culture continues to hone its skills, some officers still commit one tactical error after another. By failing to assess the real dangers, by using ineffective and dangerous deployment, and by underestimating the degree of threat.
708, dispatch.
Go ahead, 708.
I need an ambulance and a backup.
Yet 80% of you have removed edged weapons from suspects that could have been used against you.
Make that 1017.
10-4, 708.
30% of you have already been threatened with edged weapons. And if an assault is attempted against you, there's a 1 in 3 chance that you will be wounded.
Sergeant, take his gun belt off.
I got the buddy.
Okay.
Everything's gonna be all
You need
right.
to put an occlusive drip in. Okay. I need a blood pressure.
Survive, all right? We'll breathe in here, buddy. Breathing shallow.
Got a pulse yet?
Around 30 and regular.
In the last 10 years, injuries to officers from edged weapons have increased 92%.
Got wet breast zones on the left side. 2, 3. Great. Okay, let's get everybody. Come on now.
Many officers dismiss the edged weapon as a mere relic from man's primitive roots. But this relic still has the intent and means to destroy the enemy. And today, in the eyes of the knife culture, the enemy can be you.
You ready to intubate?
2.
Our goal is to help you avoid becoming an edged weapon statistic by teaching you how to make a proper threat assessment, how to select the proper force option for dealing with knives, and how to react with control.
Over his eyes.
The use of the unexpected is a favorite tactic of edged weapon offenders.
I told you 3 times to stop bothering the customers. This time you're going to jail.
Why don't you leave me alone, man? Why don't you back off?
No, this time you're going to jail.
You're too close.
Some survivors have found this out the hard way. Getting cut happens in one of 2 ways. One is a stabbing motion, usually meant to kill, which causes the weapon to puncture tissue, producing internal bleeding and destruction not visible from the outside. Death can result with a penetration of less than 1 inch in some locations. Since a relatively small amount of skin is damaged typically, blood showing from a wound may be slight because of the pressure exerted on the wound by surrounding tissue. Movement during the attack may make the wound larger and more serious before the blade is pulled out. The other way you get cut is a slashing motion, usually meant to disable you. The attacker can direct the blade to achieve deep cuts. Some edged weapons are even capable of amputating an arm. Slashes can also cause long cuts. The extensive severing of arteries and veins may release a lot of blood. Knife attacks are seldom static. They are usually dynamic with multiple redirected strikes, inflicting multiple stabs and slashes, and sometimes unanticipated reactions. You're safest to treat any call as having some potential for an edged weapon attack. But realize that certain situations tend to carry great risk. For example, in making a traffic stop, a lack of caution in contacting the driver may bring you within range of common cutting weapons.
Hi there. Say, do you have a driver's license? You just rolled through that stop sign back there.
And your partner may not even be in a position initially to help you or even see any threat.
He's here somewhere.
No problem. Something with your photo, name on it, that'll be fine.
The deputy who stopped this truck didn't see a knife hidden in the crevice between the dashboard and the windshield. While the driver was standing outside, he reached in, grabbed the knife, let out a startling martial arts yell, and attacked. The deputy was stabbed 9 times in the stomach, arm, shoulder, back, and ended up losing a kidney. On your vehicle stops, do you consider that a violator may have rigged up a scabbard in the armrest, allowing him to quickly arm himself? Or that he may reach toward you with a driver's license that he's altered with a razor blade taped to the back? Even a common item, like an ice scraper, given the right offender and motivation, can suddenly become an edged weapon you may not be expecting.
Keep them out. Nice and cool.
Moving in for an arrest, you're necessarily close.
Be nice. Hey, come on, stand up, okay? Come on, stand up.
Without good tactics, you make yourself vulnerable to an incredible array of edged weapons. Just a sampling of what's available is indicated by these knives recovered by courtroom officers. And these weapons, taken from a search of students at a public school. Of course, you're aware of the balisong, or butterfly knife, whose folding handle aids in concealment. And you've probably seen a knife that looks like a ballpoint pen. But are you familiar with the Mexican sacatripe, used for gutting sheep and other warm-blooded animals? Or the butane lighter holder that conceals a push knife in back? Or the bracelet that pulls open into a knife? This commercially available rig gives an offender ready access to throwing darts hidden up his sleeve. This kind of money clip has more of a point to it than just holding cash. And a carrier like this, easily hidden under a shirt, can quickly arm a suspect with this wicked weapon. Tonto knives, among the deadliest fighting knives, have incredible penetration capability because of their special blade configuration. Plus, they can be used to crush a human skull. The ballistic knife can either be used for conventional slashes or stabs, or fired with deadly results by a powerful spring in the handle. There's also hidden danger in this lipstick tube, popular with prostitutes. Also sold on the open market is this key that opens into a knife, and this bear claw necklace. Adding to the threat are a host of improvised weapons, sunglasses that can be flicked to poke out your eyes, fish hooks hidden in earrings or stuck through pant legs to rip your fingers on a pat-down, boots with protruding spikes, a baseball cap with razor blades sewn to the back, which can be swung by the bill to cut your face. Even something like this mace, made by a teenager with lead and spikes in his workshop. Yet it's easy to forget the possibility of being confronted by one of these, isn't it? Have you ever turned your back on a suspect because you assumed he was unarmed? How many times have you allowed an unsecured arrestee to put his hands within easy reach of a pocket that might contain a weapon? Have you ever noticed how some officers drop their gaze and never tap into folded hands as a danger cue, or enter the inside position directly in front of an offender in the area he can control with his hands and arms? And how often have you seen or used the wall search, which any suspect can defeat with practice? What's hard to imagine, unless you've already been a knife victim, is the speed with which attacks can occur. Switchblades and gravity blades can be drawn and used instantly. Folding blades, like buck knives, can be locked in place when drawn, even with one hand. Watch how fast someone who's really skilled can get into action with a knife. And concealment can be almost anywhere.
Oh, yeah, little man. Come on.
Sometimes poor tactics give an unarmed offender access to an officer's duty knife. Do your escort procedures make sure it stays secure?
Okay, let's go to the car. Hey! Come on.
Hey, little piggy.
Common household items can produce extreme damage. An attack with this grapefruit cutter would be like getting stabbed with 2 knives. And screwdrivers are the second most popular edged weapon used to commit civilian homicide. Take a guess at what common household item caused this fatal chest wound. This table fork. Officers who fall victim to edged weapons usually commit at least one critical error, like misreading what could be a weapon, or misjudging the subject.
Let's try it again. This time, why don't you leave the pens in the tray before you come through?
Sure.
Sometimes it's the unlikely individual who has the best chance of harming you. A third type of behavior usually occurs as a defensive reaction by an offender. The taunting gesture.
Get away from here. Get out of my house.
Drop the razor! Drop it!
And what he's telling you is, don't invade my space or I'll attack you.
Show me your hands, now!
One of the most dangerous forms of concealment is palming. This hides the edged weapon while still positioning it for immediate use. If you can't see a suspect's palms or the straightened tips of all of his fingers and thumbs, that's a danger cue. Another clue to assessing threat potential is how the subject is holding the edged weapon once it becomes visible. A knife held point first with a loose grip may telegraph an attempt at an underhand or slinging throw. The saber hold is for throwing overhand and is generally even less effective. But it is more powerful and may cause injury even though the knife doesn't stick. The ice pick or Hollywood grip is how many officers envision being attacked. Either a novice or an expert can use it effectively. The ice pick grip is hard to defend against and can even be delivered like this. The underhand grip lets an attacker slash as well as stab. He can hold the weapon in the hand furthest from you to protect it from disabling strikes. Then his forward hand can block or grab your arm to clear the way to the target. Another popular position is the diagonal underhand grip, which shows even more skill because the knife's edge can be rotated to cut in backhand as well as forehand movements. Many targets are vulnerable to this technique. From the femoral artery in the groin to the arms, ribs, chest, the neck, and back. A very skilled knife fighter might use the reverse ice pick grip. Here the cutting edge is held to the outside for an effective forehand slash, which is followed by backhand stabs. The crucial tactic for your buying time to assess a suspect and to protect yourself against an edged weapon you don't immediately see is this: control distance. Many officers, like the one on the left, really believe if they're close to the action, they're in control. But this attitude disregards the proxemics of the situation. That's the relationship between distance and the threat level produced by the weapon present. A common problem whether there's one officer involved or the whole shift. What about officers responding on the street below this offender? Are they too close to his gun threat? They're ignoring the concept of the reactionary gap, the distance you need from a potential threat to defend yourself if an attack is launched. For firearms assaults, a reactionary gap can be a half mile or more if good cover isn't available. To defend yourself against assaults from hands and feet, you need a reactionary gap of about 10 feet. Most officers think that's good enough for edged weapons too. But this unrehearsed training exercise shows just how fast a knife offender can shrink your reactionary gap. Here, officers have been told to investigate suspicious circumstances at night in a warehouse and react to what they find. At first glance, this officer's distance from the suspect looks safe enough. But an attacker can easily cover this distance faster than most officers can draw their guns. Remember, when you close the distance between yourself and the suspect, do so only by purposeful decision. In fact, at close distances, your only realistic option for controlling a suspect is empty hand tactics. Yet when officers are asked how they would control a knife attacker, they usually say, "I'd shoot him," forgetting that they may not have time to in reality. Here, still unrehearsed, is what really happens when officers assume they can automatically use deadly force against a knifer. They stand their ground and try to draw. Or try to draw and disengage simultaneously. Or even worse, try to draw, fall down, and shoot. And they lose. Because time and distance work for the offender and against the officer. With a reactionary gap of about 1 foot or less, it's impossible for you to react quickly enough to even touch your holstered sidearm once the attack begins. At about 5 feet, the average officer can't even get his sidearm unholstered. Unless your sidearm or baton is already out, you'll have to rely on physical control at 5 feet or less. At about 10 feet, you might get your sidearm out, but you probably won't get a shot off. A suspect with a knife can close 7 paces and deliver deadly force in less than 1 1/2 seconds. For the average officer to deliver 2 rounds against an attacker who starts moving at 10 feet, the sidearm must already be drawn and ready to shoot. At about 15 feet, your chances get a little better if you're alert, anticipate danger, and are skilled with your equipment. But to deliver 2 rounds center of mass, your hand would already have to be on your sidearm when the attack begins. Tests with hundreds of officers reveal that in most cases, a minimum reactionary gap of 21 feet is required to react and deliver at least 2 rounds and to have enough time to move out of the attacker's path. And in certain other situations, what you're looking at is something you've never seen before, but you've heard about. Inmates in a maximum security prison practicing their edged weapon skills. This is one training ground for the group that lives at the very heart of the knife culture and is ready to take you on. Hardcore criminal offenders. They go to great lengths to develop the deadly talents their career survival depends on. They have the training, they have the interest, and sooner or later, they get good in the ways they train. With the use of an extreme telephoto lens, you can see close up how they practice in small groups, usually with several lookouts. They use toothbrushes or pencils to simulate knives. But there's nothing pretend about their goal. Some of the weapons are crudely constructed from makeshift materials, razor blades taped to toothbrushes, or hidden in match packs, or melted into pens. A safety pin straightened out and sharpened, pieces of plexiglass or metal wrapped with cloth for a handle, or tied to a cutting edge that can be swung. But prisoners with access to metal shops can produce more sophisticated edged weapons, like these. Prison gangs customarily have their own edged weapon makers with special tricks of the trade. A sandpaper grip or a cloth handle strap will help control the weapon when it gets bloody. Rust sometimes is deliberately used to complicate injuries. Pointed weapons can easily be converted into spears with rolled-up newspapers which have been soaked and dried to a hardened shaft. One correctional facility where a sergeant was killed reported 70 spear attacks on officers in a single year. Outside prison, there are those with martial arts training who prefer the edged instrument over other weapons because of its silence. It never jams, never has to be reloaded, and it doesn't leave a ballistic residue. Plus, they understand that even for violent crimes, our liberal courts tend to be more lenient with knife offenders than with criminals who use guns. Targets that you must try hardest to protect include your chest and upper abdominal area, where a wound can cause catastrophic bleeding. Another protection priority is the neck area, where the carotid artery and jugular vein are located just under the skin. Also, protect your groin region, where a severed femoral artery or other nearby artery can spurt out a fatal quantity of blood in just a few moments. If an offender gets your face, bleeding or eye cuts can impair your fighting ability. Your back offers an attacker the base of your brain and your kidneys lower down. Will soft body armor protect you against edged weapons? In some cases, yes. The deputy who was attacked wearing this vest was stabbed. But the vest limited the weapon's depth of penetration and allowed him to keep going. On the other hand, there are no guarantees with any piece of police equipment. Would a vest or anything else have saved this victim? Some body armor models have been designed for added protection by including a special trauma plate or other stab-resistant material designed to inhibit lethal penetration. But most conventional vest models aren't foolproof against many stabbing blades. Soft body armor is designed to stop the blunt trauma of bullets, not sharp points. However, as this officer happily discovered, many vests will significantly increase your protection against slashes. His assailant slashed through several layers of Kevlar, but the officer did not get cut. Remember that knife wounds don't produce the extreme hydrostatic shock of bullet wounds. Unless the edged weapon has pierced a vital organ, it's quite possible to remain functional. A lot of blood doesn't necessarily mean a lot of serious injury. Once the suspect has fled or is neutralized, visually inspect yourself. You may have wounds you don't feel. Control bleeding by using direct, constant pressure over the wound. Use your palm or other available object. This will help stop the flow of blood to permit clotting. Consciously, make your breathing slow, deep, and rhythmic. This will lessen your adrenaline rush, slow down your rate of bleeding, and delay the onset of shock.
6-3 dispatcher.
Sometimes empty-hand control is your only option for stopping an attack. The off-duty officer on the right was being chased by an EDP armed with 2 knives. But when the officer fired and missed and then ran out of ammunition, he couldn't perform any effective physical control techniques and ended up getting killed. When you can't create or maintain distance, or you have no other choice, you may have to know effective unarmed defense as a last resort. But be aware of extensive misinformation on this subject.
Hey, man, what are you doing here?
Standing around.
Well, why are you standing here and not on some street corner somewhere?
Free country, man. I can stand where I want.
Well, I don't like that. Let me see what's in your hand over here. You got some ID or something, man?
Yeah, I got something for
Well,
you.
let me see.
Sometimes trainers claim fist fighting works, but usually it doesn't, because it doesn't stabilize the weapon. Remember classic techniques like the X-block? This just wastes time and gives him an easy target by keeping you in line with the motion of his weapon. Never use anything valuable as an obstacle. Tactics designed to defeat traditional physical control measures are widely available and taught to civilians. A basic concept for countering obstacles is simply to redirect the edged weapon and keep attacking from another angle. Here, an amateur photographer captured this officer standing far too close to a suspect with a buck knife. The officer grabs the suspect's wrist, trying to disarm him. But the suspect simply switches the knife to his other hand. A struggle develops, increasing the risk to the officer who's afraid to shoot because of bystanders. Only later does the officer manage to get the suspect to the ground. Luckily, the fall breaks the offender's wrist, and no one gets stabbed. Most unarmed defenses require that you be standing up to be successful. In reality, you may be running, already down on the ground, or getting out of your patrol car. Unless your moves allow you to immediately control or defeat the blade from any position, you'll continue to be vulnerable to tactics like multiple strikes. A more effective technique when you're moving and behind the suspect is a rapid takedown without letting him stop and turn. Here, the officer grabs the suspect's wrist and elbow in an escort grip. Then the suspect is stunned against the ground with a forceful armbar.
Throw the knife away! Throw it out! Put your arms out to your side!
Even though the officer was not initially aware of the knife threat, good physical tactics kept him safe.
Let me see your hands. Knife! Drop the knife!
One tactical option for close-up self-defense is to forcefully sweep and shove the attacker's knife arm away to deflect his attack. Then quickly move forward to expand your reactionary gap. This is called sweep and disengage.